Chapter 4. Once at the preacher, we were sitting on the couch and Winniedex was just sitting between us. Winniedex had already decided he liked the couch a lot. One, said the preacher again. Winniedex looked at him kind of hard. Your mama was funny. She could make just about anybody laugh. Two, he said. She had red hair and freckles, just like me, I said. Just like you, the preacher nodded. Three, she liked to plant things. She had a talent for it. She could stick a tire in the ground and grow a car. Winniedex started chewing on his pole, and I tapped him on the head to make him stop. Four, said the preacher. She could run fast. If you were racing her, you couldn't ever let her get a head start, because she would beat you for sure. I'm that way too, I said. Back home in Waterloo, I raced Liam Fulton and beat him. And he said it wasn't fair because boys and girls shouldn't race each other to begin with. I told him he was just a sore loser. The preacher nodded. He was quiet for a minute. I'm ready for number 5, I told him. 5, he said. She couldn't cook. She burned everything, including water. She had a hard time putting a can of beans. She couldn't make head nor tail of a piece of meat. 6. The preacher rubbed his nose and looked up at the ceiling. Winniedex looked up too. Number 6 is that your mama loved the story. She would sit and listen to stories all day long. She loved to be told a story. She especially liked funny ones, stories that made her laugh. The preacher nodded his head like he was agreeing with himself. What's number 7? I asked. Let's see, he said. She knew all the constellations, every planet in the nighttime sky, every last one of them. She could name them and point them out, and she never got tired of looking up at them. Number 8, said the preacher, with his eyes closed, was that she hated being a preacher's wife. She said she just couldn't stand this, having the ladies at church judge what she was wearing and what she was cooking and how she was singing. She said it made her feel like a bug under microscope. Winniedex lay down on the couch. He put his nose in the preacher's lap and his tail in mine. 10, said the preacher. 9, I told him. 9, said the preacher. She drank. She drank beer and whiskey and wine. Sometimes she couldn't stop drinking, and that made me and your mama fight quite a bit. Number 10, he said, with a long sigh. Number 10 is that your mama loved you. She loved you very much, but she left me, I told him. She left us, said the preacher softly. I could see him pulling his old turtle head back into his stupid turtle shell. She packed her bags and left us, and she didn't leave one thing behind. Okay, I said. I got up off the couch. Winniedex hopped off too. Thank you for telling me, I said. I went right back to my room and wrote down all 10 things that the preacher had told me. I wrote them down just the way he said them to me so that I wouldn't to forget them. And then I read them out loud to Benedict until I had them memorized. I wanted to know those 10 things inside and out. That way, if my mama ever come back, I could recognize her and I would be able to grab her and hold on to her tight and not let her go get away from me again. Chapter 5. Benedict couldn't stand to be left alone. We found that out real quick. If me and the preacher went off and left him by himself in the trailer, he pulled all the cushions off the couch and all the toilet paper off the roll. So we started tying him up outside with a rope when we left. That didn't work either. Benedict hold until somehow Mrs. Turtle's dog started howling too. It was exactly the kind of noise that people in all other trailer parks do not like to hear. He just doesn't want to be left alone, I told the preacher. That's all. Let's take him with us. I could understand the way Benedict felt. Getting left behind probably made his heart feel empty. After a while, the preacher gave in, and everywhere we went, we took Benedict, even to church. The Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi isn't a regular looking church. The building used to be a Picket Creek store, and when you walk in from the front door, the first thing you see is the Picket Creek motor. It's written on the floor in little tiny red tiles that make great big letters that say pick, 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 quick, quick, quick. The preacher tried painting over those tiles, but the letters won't stay covered up, and so the preacher had just given up and let them be. The other thing about the open arms that is different from other churches is their aren't any pools. People bring in their own fold-up chairs and lawn chairs, and so sometimes it looked more like the congregation is watching a parade or sitting at the barbecue instead of being at church. It's a kind of a strange church, and I thought Benedict would fit right in. But the first time we brought Benedict to the open arms, the preacher tied him outside the front door. Why did we bring him all the way here just to tie him up? I asked the preacher. Because dogs don't belong in church, your Paul, the preacher said. That's why. He tied Benedict to a tree and said how there was lots of shade for him and that it ought to work out real good. Well, it didn't. The service started and there was some singing and some sharing and some praying, and then the preacher started preaching. And he wasn't but 2 or 3 words into his sermon when there was a terrible howl outside. The preacher tried to ignore it. Today, he said, "Oh," said Benedict. "Please," said the preacher. "Oh," said Benedict back. "Friend," said the preacher. "Oh," wailed Benedict. Everyone turned in their lawn chairs and fold-up chairs and looked at one another. Papa, said the preacher. Oh, said Benedict. Yes, sir, said. Go get that doll. He yelled. Yes, sir, I yelled back. I went outside and tied Benedict's and brought him inside. And he sat down beside me and smiled up at the preacher. And the preacher couldn't help it. He smiled back. Benedict had that effect on him. And so the preacher started in the preaching again. Benedict sat there listening to it, wiggling his ears this way and that, trying to catch all the words. And everything would have been all right except that a mouse ran across the floor. The open arms had mice. They were there from when it was a pick and crack, and there were lots of food, good things to eat in the building. And when the pick and crack became the Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi, the mice stayed around to eat all the leftover crumbs from the potluck suppers. The preacher kept on saying he was going to have to do something about them, but he never did, because the truth is he couldn't stand the thought of hurting anything, even a mouse. Well, when Alex saw that mouse, and he was up and after him. One minute everything was quiet, the serious and the preacher was going on and on and on. The next minute, Benedict looked like a fiery bullet shooting across the building, chasing the monster who was barking, and his feet were skidding all over the polished picket floor, and people were clapping and hollering and pointing. They really went wild when Benedict actually caught the mouse. I have never in my life seen a dog catch a mouse, said Mrs. Noodly. She was just sitting next to me. He's a special dog, I told her. I imagine so. She stared back. Benedict stood up there in front of the whole church, wagging his tail and holding the mouse real careful in his mouth, holding on to him tight but not squeezing him. I believe that Mott has got some retriever in him, said somebody behind me. That's the hunting dog. Benedict took the mouse over to the preacher and dropped it at his feet. And when the mouse tried to get away, Benedict put his paw right on the mouse's tail. Then he smiled up at the preacher. He showed him all his teeth. The preacher looked down at the mouse. He looked at Benedict. He looked at me. He rubbed his nose. It got real quiet in the picket creek. Let us pray, the preacher finally said, for this mouse. And everybody started laughing and clapping. The preacher picked up the mouse by the tail and walked and threw it out the front door of the picket creek. And everybody applauded again. Then he came back and we all prayed together. I prayed for my mama. I told God how much she would have enjoyed hearing the story of Benedict catching that mouse. It would have made her laugh. I asked God if maybe I could be the one to tell her that story someday. And then I talked to God about how I was lonely in Naomi because I didn't know that many kids, only the ones from church, and they weren't the many kids at the open arms, just Dunlap and Mr. Dewberry, two brothers who weren't twins but looked like they were, and Amanda Wilkinson, whose face was always pinched up like she was smelling something real bad, and Sweetie Pie Thomas, who was only 5 years old and still mostly a baby, and none of them wanted to be my friend anyway because they probably thought I'd tell them to the preacher for every little thing they did wrong, and then they would get in trouble with God and their parents. So I told God that I was lonely, even having winning eggs. And finally, I prayed for the mouse, like the preacher suggested. I prayed that he didn't get hurt when he went to flying out the door of the Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi. I prayed that he landed on a nice soft patch of grass. Number 6. I spent a lot of time that summer at the Herman W. Black Memorial Library. The Herman W. Black Memorial Library sounds like it would be a big fancy palace, but it's not. It's just a little old house full of books, and Miss Franny Black is in charge of them all. She is a very small, very old woman with the short gray hair, and she was the first friend I made in Naomi. It all started with Winnie and not liking it when I went into the library because he couldn't go inside too. But I showed him how he could stand up on his hind legs and look in the window and see me in there selecting my books, and he was okay as long as he could see me. But the thing was, the first time Mr. Franny Black saw Benedict standing up on his hind legs like that, looking in the window, she didn't think he was a dog. She thought he was a bear. This is what happened. I was picking out my books and kind of humming to myself, and all of a sudden there was this loud and scary scream. I went running up to the front of the library, and there was Miss Franny Block sitting on the floor behind her desk. Miss Franny, I said, are you alright? A bear, she said. A bear? I asked her. He has come back, she said. He has? I asked her. Where is he? Out there, she said, and raised her finger and pointed at Benedict standing up on his hind legs, looking through the window for me. Mr. Franny Block, I said, that's not a bear, that's a dog, that's my dog, Benedict. Are you positive? She asked. Yes, ma'am, I told her. I'm positive he's my dog. I would know him anywhere. Miss Franny sat there, trembling and shaking. Come on, I said. Let me help you up. It's okay. I stuck out my hand and Miss Franny took hold of it and I pulled her up off the floor. She didn't weigh hardly anything at all. Once she was standing on her feet, she started acting all embraced, saying how I must think she was a silly old lady mistaking a dog for a bear, but that she had a bad experience with a bear coming into the Herman W. Black Memorial Library a long time ago, and she never had quite gotten over it. When did that happen? I asked her. Well, said Mrs. Franny, it is a very long story. That's okay, I told her. I'm like my mama in that I like to be told the stories, but before you start telling it, can Winnie Dixon come in and listen too? He gets lonely without me. Well, I don't know, said Mrs. Franny. Dogs are not allowed in the Herman W. Black Memorial Library. He'll be good, I told her. He's a dog who goes to church, and before she could say yes or no, I went outside and got Benedict, and he came in to lay down with a hmm and the sigh right at Miss Franny's feet. She looked down at him and said, "He must too certainly is a large dog." Yes, ma'am, I told her. He has a larger heart, too. Well, Mr. Franny said she bent over and gave Benedict's a pat on the head, and Benedict wagged his tail back and forth and snuffled around her little old lady feet. Let me get a chair and sit down so I can tell this story probably. Chapter 7. Back when Florida was wild, when it consisted of nothing but palmetto trees and mosquitoes so big they could fly away with you, Miss Franny Block started in, and I was just a little girl, no bigger than you. My father, Herman W. Block told me that I could have anything I wanted for my birthday, anything at all. Mr. Franny looked around the library. She leaned in closer to me. I don't want to be a proud fool, she said, but my daddy was a very rich man, a very rich man. She nodded and then leaned back and said, and I was a little girl who lived to read. So I told him, I said, Daddy, I would most certainly love to have a library for my birthday. A small little library would be wonderful. You asked for a whole library. A small one, Mr. Franny nodded. I wanted a little house full of nothing but books, and I wanted to share them too. And I got my wish. My father built me this house, the very one we were sitting in now. And at a very young age, I became a librarian. Yes, ma'am. What about the bear? Said did I mention that Florida was wild in those days? Mr. Franny Bullock said, uh-huh, you did. It was wild. There were wild men and wild women and wild animals like bears. Yes, ma'am. That's right. Now I have to tell you, I was a little Mr. Know-it-all. I was a Mrs. Smarty Pants with my library full of books. Oh, yes, ma'am. I thought I knew the answer to everything. Well, now, hot Thursday, I was sitting in my library with all the doors and the windows open and my nose stuck in the book when a shadow crossed the desk and without looking up, yes, ma'am, without even looking up, I said, is there a book I can help you find? Well, there was no answer and I thought it might have been a wild man or wild woman scared of all these books and afraid to speak up. But then I became aware of a very peculiar smell, a very strong smell. I raised my eyes slowly, and standing right in front of me was a bear. Yes, ma'am, a very large bear. How big? I asked it. Oh, well, said Miss Franny. Perhaps 3 times the size of your dog. Then what happened? I asked her. Well, said Mr. Franny, I looked at him and he looked at me. He put his big nose up in the air and sniffed as if he was trying to decide if I little Miss Know it all librarian was what he was in the mood to eat. And I sat there. And then I thought, well, if this bear intends to eat me, I am not going to let it happen without a fight. No, ma'am. So very slowly and very carefully I raised the book I was reading. What book was that? I asked her. Why, it was War and Peace, a very large book. I raised it up slowly and then I aimed it carefully and I threw it right at that bear and screamed, Be gone! And do you know what? No, ma'am, I said. He went. But this is what I will never forget. He took the book with him. No, I said. Yes, ma'am, said Mr. Franny. He snatched it up and ran. Did he come back? I asked. No, I never saw him again. Well, the man in town used to tease me about it. They used to say, Mr. Franny, we saw that bear of yours out in the wood today. He was reading the book and he said it sure was good and would it be all right if he kept there for just another week. Yes, ma'am. They did tease me about it. She sighed. Amazing. I'm the only one left from those days. Amazing. I imagine I'm the only one who even recalled that bear. All my friends, everyone I knew when I was young, they are all dead and gone. She sighed again. She looked sad and old wrinkled. It was the same way I felt sometimes being friendly in a new town and not having no mama to comfort me. I sighed too. When the taxi raised his head off his paws and looked back and forth between me and Miss Franny, he stood up then and showed Miss Franny his teeth. Well, now, look at that, she said. That dog is smiling at me. It's a talent of his, I told her. It's a fine talent, Miss Franny said. A very fine talent. And she smiled back at Winniedex. We could be friends, I said to Miss Franny. I mean, you and me and Winniedex, we could all be friends. Miss Franny smiled even bigger. Why, that would be grand, she said, just grand. And right at that minute, right when the three of us had decided to be friends, who should we come marching into our Herman W. Brock Memorial Library but old pinch-faced Amanda Wilkinson. She walked right up to Miss Franny's desk and said, I finished the journey to Maine and I enjoyed it very much. I would like something even more different to read now because I am an advanced reader. Yes, dear, no, said Mr. Franny. She got up out of her chair and man that pretended like I wasn't there. She strode right past me. Are those allowed in the library? She asked Mr. Franny as they walked away. Certain ones, said Miss Franny, a select few. And then she turned around and winked at me. I smiled back. I had just made my first friend in Naomi, and nobody was going to mess that up for me. Not even old pinch-faced Amanda Wilkinson. Chapter 8. Winnie the X. Bard's pots started growing fall, and the fall that he had to begin with started looking shiny and healthy and didn't limp anymore. And you could tell that he was proud of looking so good, proud of not looking like a stray. I thought what he needed most was a collar and a leash. So I went into Gertrude's Pets, where there were fish and snakes and mice and lizards and goblins and pet suppliers, and I found a real handsome leather collar with a matching leash. Benedict was not allowed to come inside in this door. There was a big sign on the door that said, "No dogs allowed." So I held the collar and the leash up to the window, and Benedict, who was standing on the other side of the window, pulled up his lip and showed me his teeth and sneezed and wagged his tail, something furious. So I knew he absolutely loved that leash and collar combination. But it was very expensive. I decided to explain my situation to the man behind the counter. I said, "I don't get a big enough allowance to afford something this fancy, but I love this collar and leash, and so does my dog. And I was thinking that maybe you could set me up on instant installment plan." "Installment plan?" said the man. Go rude. Somebody screamed in a real irritating voice. I looked around. It was a parrot. She was just sitting on top of one of the fish tanks, looking right at me. "An instrument plan," I said, ignoring the parrot. "You know where I promised to give you my allowance every week, and you give me the leash and the collar now." "I don't think I can do that," said the man. He shook his head. "No, the owner, she wouldn't like that." He looked down at the counter. He wouldn't look at me. He had a thick black hair, and it was slicked back like Elvis Presley's. He had on a name tag that said Otis, or "I could work for you." I said I could come in and sweep the floors and dust the shelves and take out the trash. I could do that. I looked around. Got to Rouge Pets. There was sand and sunflower seed shells and big dust balls all over the floor. I could tell that it needed to be swept. Said Otis. He looked down at the counter some more. "Good, Rude." The parrot screamed again. "I'm real trustworthy." I said, "I'm new in town, but my daddy is a preacher. He's the preacher at the Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi, so I'm real honest. But the only thing is, when it asks my dog, he would have to come inside with me, because if we get separate for too long, he started to howl something terrible. "Gertrude doesn't like dogs," said Otis. Is she the owner? I asked her. Yes, Amin. No, Amin. He finally looked up. He pointed at the fish tank that Gertrude, the parrot, I named her after the owner. Gertrude, a pretty bird, screamed Gertrude. She might like Benedict. I told Otis. Almost everybody does. Maybe he could come inside and meet her, and if the two of them get along, then could I have the job? Maybe, Otis mumbled. He looked down at the count again, so I went and opened the door, and Benedict came trotting on inside the store. Dog! Screamed Gertrude. I know it, Otis told her. Then Gertrude got real quiet. She sat on the top of the fish tank and cocked her head from one side to the other, looking at Benedict. And Benedict stood and stared back at her. He didn't hardly move. He didn't wag his tail. He didn't smile. He didn't sneeze. He just stared at Gertrude, and she stared at him. And then she spread her wings out real far and flew and landed on top of Benedict's head. Down! She croaked. Benedict wagged his tail just a little tiny bit. And Otis said, "You can start on Monday." "Thank you," I told him. "You won't be sorry on the way out of Gertrude Pets." I said to Benedict, "You are better at making friends than anybody I have ever known. I bet if my mama knew you, she would think you were the best dog ever." Benedict was smiling up at me, and I was smiling down at him. And so neither one of us was looking where we were going, and we almost bumping right into Sweetie Pie Thomas. She was just standing there, sucking on the knuckle of her third finger, starting in the window of Gertrude Pet's. She took her finger out of her mouth and looked at me. Her eyes were all big and round. "Was that bird sitting on that dog's head?" she asked. She had her hair tied up in a ponytail with a pink ribbon. But it wasn't much of a ponytail. It was mostly ribbon and a few strands of hair. "Yes, I told her. "I seen it," she said. She nodded her head and put her knuckle back in her mouth. Then she took it out again real quick. "I seen that dog in church too. He was catching a mouse. I want a dog just like it, but my mom won't let me get no dog. She says if I'm a real girl, I might get to buy me a goldfish or one of them got to go bills." That's what she says. "Can I pet your dog?" "Sure," I told her. Sweetie Pie stroked Winnie Dixie's head so long and serious that his eyes dropped half closer and the drool came out of the side of his mouth. "I'm going to be 6 years old in September. I got to stop sucking on my knuckle once I'm 6," said Sweetie Pie. "I'm having a party. Do you want to come to my party? The theme is pink." "Sure," I told her. "Can this dog come?" she asked. "You bet," I told her. And all of a sudden, I felt happy. I had a dog, I had a job, I had a Miss Franny Black for a friend, and I had my first invitation to party in Naomi. It didn't matter that it came from a 5-year-old and the party wasn't until September. I didn't feel so lonely anymore. Chapter 9. Just about everything that happened to me that summer happened because of Winnie Dexter. For instance, without him, I would never have met Gloria Dunn. He was the one who introduced us. What happened is this: I was riding my bike home from Gertrude Pets, and Winnie Dixon was running along beside me. We went past the Dunlop and the service Dewberry's house, and when Dunlop and service saw me, they got on their bikes and started following me. They wouldn't ride with me. They just ride behind me and whispering things that I couldn't hear. Neither one of them had any hair on his head because their mama shaved their heads every week during the summer because of one time Dunlop got fleas in his hair from their cats, said he. And now they look like two identical bald-headed babies, even though they weren't twins. Dunlop was 10 years old like me, and Steve was 9 and tall for his age. I can hear you. I hollered back at them. I can hear what you're saying, but I couldn't. Benedict started to race way ahead of me. You better watch out, Dunlop hollered. That dog is headed right for the witch's house. Benedict, I called, but he kept on going faster than Hope to Gate